Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Annette Evans-Smith. I'm the EPA R6 Pollution Prevention Coordinator. And I would like to welcome you to the EPA Pollution Prevention Roundtable Grantees Meeting, hosted by one of our state grantees, New Mexico State University. The EPA Pollution Prevention Program has been in existence since 1990, and our grantees have been instrumental in continuously, continuously making the P2 program a success by utilizing our great grant funds to provide technical assistance to programs, to provide technical assistance to businesses in order to help them develop and adopt cost reduction best practices throughout Region 6. Thank you, New Mexico State University and our other state grantees for making and educating industry on how waste is produced and can be minimized or even prevented, which is the first steps to reducing waste, making pollution prevention an essential component of sustainability. Also, thank you all for your efforts in helping us to carry out the missions of the R6 Pollution Prevention Program of preventing pollution at the source and the mission of EPA of protecting human health and the environment. At this time, I would like to introduce y'all to my supervisor, Robert Snowbacher, Section Chief for the US, SMM, and P2 program at EPA.
Thank you, Annette. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our meeting today. We're very excited about this. It's going to be a really good meeting. We continue to work really hard here in Region 6 to advance the P2 program, but that can't be done without our partners. So we greatly appreciate all the work and effort that all of y'all put into advancing the program here in the region. And we really appreciate all of y'all joining today, and thanks in advance to all of our speakers and presenters today that we're able to make this possible. So I will mention a couple of changes to the program here in Region 6. Many of you may have met Whitney Lear over the past 6 months or so as part of our program through various meetings and events and the monthly calls that Annette was hosting. She has left the program to go to Region 4. So we are in the process of trying to find someone to take her spot. Melanie Lillard from our staff, from our Sustainable Materials Management Program, will be helping out and covering some of the things like Safer Choice. And so she'll be an asset and a resource to the program. And of course, we'll continue to have Annette leading the program, and she's been doing a great job, and we look forward to seeing what else she can do, moving the program forward over the next few years. And so with that, Annette, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Robbie. We'll now turn the meeting over to Alina Perez.
Hello, everybody. We're going to introduce our first speaker, who is Patricia A. Sullivan, PhD, Associate Dean, Outreach and Recruiting, Introduction of Engineering Business Assistance at NMSU.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to the EPA Roundtable. I wanted to give you a little bit of update on what we're doing here in New Mexico as part of our Business Assistance Program. We're real excited over the past couple of years. We've been able to expand the program offerings that we're doing here. And as all of you have seen this past year with COVID, we've had to readjust and pivot on how we approached our businesses. So I'd like to give you a little bit of update on what we're doing in New Mexico. Next slide. We really have focused on 4 main technical areas, focus areas here in New Mexico. We also serve El Paso, Texas. We've been looking at working in the food and beverage industry. We have a growing brewery, distillery, and winery industry in New Mexico. So being able to work with that group has been really exciting, especially this past year. Some of them have had to take some time off. They were shut down under the pandemic, but now that they're opening up, they've been able to kind of think about how they're redoing their business model and looking at how they can incorporate some of our sustainability practices. The same is happening with our hospitality area. And as always, we've worked with agriculture and manufacturing. But there's a renewed interest now. It's almost like people paused, took some time to think about how they were approaching things. And now they're coming back out of the pandemic in a different mindset. People are a little more open to exploring energy efficient services, pollution prevention, waste minimization. And so we're excited to start working with newer small businesses and people in the rural areas as we advance our efforts. Next slide. Over the past several years, we've been tracking what we do in terms of our recommendations. And in the past, we've done these on an annual basis in specific areas, looking at hazardous materials, water saved, greenhouse gases, eliminated, and energy savings. And if you look at the last 4 years, the potential annual cost savings for all of our recommendations have been over $10 million. And what we're working on right now in this new grant is actually going back and engaging the outcomes of these recommendations and really looking at how many things did we recommend, did people actually implement, and what were the actual realized cost savings. And I think in the next couple of years, we'll be able to give more information, doing a little more training, doing a little more engagement with our customer base or client base, and looking at not just the recommendations, but now, did you implement them? Look at case studies. Did you have questions? Are there things maybe you started doing as kind of the low-hanging fruit, but now you want to progress into some of the other areas? So we're not really looking at it as a one and done, but really looking at it as an opportunity to grow our relationship and partnership with our industry partners. Next slide. Over the past year, we've had to really evaluate how we did our services. And most of what we did was on-site, working with businesses. We would go in and we would do the assessment, and it would be a 2 to 3 day process. When COVID, the pandemic hit, we really had to reevaluate what we were doing. And we started looking at being able to do some things online. Some businesses were still in operation. A lot of people had shut down because of the pandemic, and were interested in just kind of reevaluating their business model and their business practices. So it gave us an opportunity internally to also look at how we were delivering the services that we provide. And we looked at how do we move to an online assessment process. A lot of the companies that want to initially get into this really don't have the time, or maybe they're not quite sure if they want to take the full plunge and move into a 3-day assessment or a multi-day assessment and collecting the data. But they want to maybe take a little step into the world of energy assessment and P2 assessment without overly committing. So we created an online process where we do an online form. They can request the service. Then we can go in and we evaluate the data, look at next steps, and then we talk to the company about what is the virtual assessment process. Are you really interested in maybe doing a live stream, doing a pre-recorded walkthrough, taking some pictures, let us look through some of your processes, more in an informal but yet informative fashion. And then we take that information and we go ahead and do some initial assessment and diagnosis, and then make some initial recommendations. What we found is there's quite a few people really interested in this early stage assessment process. And then what we do from there is, if it looks like we maybe can go ahead and set up an on-site assessment, we go into more in depth and schedule a time to work with these companies. But this process has allowed us to be a little more outward facing and proactive with our business and industry partners. And we're starting to get more requests over our web. And Jalal and his team are starting to implement some of those requests and turning them into assessments. Next slide. This is really our timeline of what we're looking to do. If when a business comes in and asks for the online application, they complete the process. Our team then goes into all outreach mode and starts looking at the data collection, working with the businesses on the virtual tour, setting up online meetings and training. A lot of times the training needs to be taken place in terms of just what it is they're looking for, the kinds of data they're collecting, and just talking through their process within their respective operations. And then we get into the data savings, identifying savings and recommendations, and then follow up with them in terms of implementation. So we're real excited about the new process for online assessments and more in a proactive fashion. We're starting to do more with TMAC in El Paso, still working with our manufacturing extension partnership here in New Mexico, but also teaming up with other groups like our Brewers Guild here in New Mexico with the brewery industry, working with our Department of Agriculture on food processing. And we've started reaching out to some of the hospitality and tourism groups, mostly as things are opening back up for hotels and restaurants. So we are open to questions or ideas about what we're doing here in New Mexico, but we're real excited about the pivot that we've taken, the proactive approach we're taking. And I want to commend Jalal and his team for the great work they're doing. So thank you again for taking some time to join us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. We are now going to introduce Jalal Rostagadi. He is a research scientist for New Mexico State University. He's been working on different aspects of renewable energy, new bioenergy, and sustainable management of integrated water, energy use for more than 25 years. He provides technical assistance to small businesses, provides on-site technical assistance in areas of pollution prevention and energy efficiency, and assesses operations focusing on environmental and P2 performance to provide recommendations for improvements and related cost savings. Mr. Ashigari has published more than 30 journal and conference papers. He is a reviewer for the following programs and journals: the Food Science and Nutrition topic of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's USDA, Small Business Innovation Research SBIR program, the USDA's Biofuel program, the African Journal of Environmental Science and Technology, and the Basic Research Journal of Agricultural Science Review. Please welcome Jalal.
Thank you, Elena, for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this roundtable. Amirza, if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, our grant covers two important areas. One is WERC Environmental Design Contest, or P2 awards. And the other part is providing the technical assistant to the industries. So two parts, I'm gonna talk about the environmental design contest briefly. Next, please. So this environmental design contest is a unique design competition that brings industry, government, and academia together for search of improving solution for today's environmental challenges. It has been around since 1991, and students from around the country, across the country and around the world attend this design competition. It has, many people went for many years and came back and did this. Professors bring their students, they bring their, knowledge, and they share their knowledge. And we have many people that retired from the university and came back as judges to serve in this event. Actually, I think Chris Campbell, he is with us. He has been part of our P2 program for many years. And after he retired, now he is joining us and doing the work as a judge for the design contest. So thank you, Chris, if you are with us. Thank you for all you do for the environment. And next, please. So there are different universities that they are doing the, they are doing the design competition. What is unique about us? We are doing things differently. It's well established, and we are having a group of people from the industries, from the academia, from the government, and they all get together and they are doing the work. Somehow looks like I'm not, some people are not hearing me. So yes. So we are doing a lot of work that with them, and they are defining the tasks. So when they define the tasks, they are actually, students go and work on the tasks. It's like a capstone. It takes about 9 months for students to put everything together, and they come up with the solutions. The solution is holistic, is very comprehensive. They are looking at the bench scale design. Then they test their bench scale. When they come to the design contest, they are presenting their oral presentation. They are presenting a poster. They show how their design is working. And they are looking at the economic issues of the this design, and they are also looking at their policy, looking at the logistic feasibility, regulation. So it's holistic. It's not just doing one design, and the judges make sure that the design is working, is something that is everything is considered during their design. So P2 is part of this. We define some criteria for the P2 awards. There are different sponsors that they have awards for this competition. And we have something for the P2 that when they look at their design, they should look at all the energy, water, waste, chemicals, and everything that is related to the environment. So that's how the judges look at the design and see if it is something that is good for selection for the award. Next. So this year we had 21 teams from 14 universities, 116 students, and 20 advisors. 36 judges from 12 states, total of 175 participants. Some of the universities that they participated, you can see like Rice universities, famous ones. We also participated in MSU, and there was a really very interesting competition. Next. So for our P2 awards, the University of Colorado at Boulder, they presented a proposal for destroying PFAS. PFAS is really something very challenging, and it is very difficult to get eliminated from the environment. And it's called forever chemicals. So that's something that they worked on it. They used the waste from the municipal solid waste, and they used the adsorption to absorb this PFAS. And all the heat that generated through the process, they reused it for their process. So they considered everything that we were looking for. They used the hazardous chemicals, they used the waste, and recycled the waste, and also they reused the energy. So this was something that the judges decided to be one of the winners. Next. So some of you might not have some, haven't seen the design contest in action. We have a short video that highlights some of the things that the students and judges and the staff that are involved in the process, they are working on. If you could show this video, please. Thank you. This was part of the 2021, although it was during the pandemic, but we had some great results, and it was really good that people participated. And one more thing about our design contest is that, you know, patents came out of this competition. There are startups that, you know, started from this competition. So there are a lot of good things coming out of this design contest, and we hope that it continues for many years to come. To give you an update on our P2 and what we have done, as Dr. Sullivan mentioned, we have gone virtual, and we noticed that if we do semi-virtual by going ourselves in the businesses and ask them to look at their process, look at their, you know, what they are doing, and actually taking pictures, taking videos, it can help us a lot better, so we understand better and we can come back and do the calculation and make the recommendations. So it takes about 2-3 hours instead of 2 to 3 days to go to the companies. They are happy with it, and but we need some more information. We contact them, we get their forms, and that's how we are doing it. So far we have done 4, and I'm gonna talk about one of them that we have done. Next, please. So this is a pecan processing plant in El Paso, Texas. It's a very big facilities, a lot of machineries, a lot of energy use, water use, chemical use, everything. So this was a good study, and we have made some recommendation that I think it would be interested for you to find out. Next. So as for all the P2s, we are looking for energy saving, water saving, hazardous materials, greenhouse gas elimination. So these are something that we all look for when we go to any facilities. Next, please. For this particular one, we looked at their energy conservation, and we also checked for their energy efficiency, how efficient they were, and what are the areas that they can make improvement. We went through checking their lighting, building construction, heating and cooling, whether they are using Energy Star equipment, how is their fuel efficiency, HVAC system, whether they are have automated controls, refrigeration, and finally, if they are willing to go for renewable energy, and they were very interested for renewable energy. Next, please. Somehow I don't see my, yes, next. So we did a detailed study for if they want to go use the solar energy. As I mentioned, it was a big facility. They are using about 2.5 million kilowatt of hours. That's how much they used last year. And it shows that constantly the energy is increasing, huge amount of energy, and they are actually have a lot of waste, energy waste. So then the next one, please. Okay, so we did the analysis and did the cost and benefits for this facility, and we find out that if they go for the solar energy, they can save a lot of energy and also reduce their cost. If they want to install a solar panel, it's costing them about $750,000. The payback is about 7 years. So that's even if they don't use any tax breaks, they don't use any grants, anything. But considering that they are not going to use any of those, the payback is about 7 years. And after 10 years, it shows how much they can save, and they have a huge saving after 25 years. So this was got them excited. The only problem is that they are renting their place, but they have bought land and they are moving to new facilities within 2 years. So they want us to help them with this study helped them a lot to consider going solar. Next, please. For their energy saving shows also in first year start to save energy after 10 years and after 25 years. Their total emission reduction would be about 2,800 metric tons. That's how much they can, that's their emission that they're gonna reduce in metric tons. Next. We also look at their water. They could save water in their process, when they are adjusting their equipments and their facility. They were also, there were leaks all over the place. So there were some improvements that they could make and save water. About 860,000 gallons of water, about 11% of their water would be saved if they implement our recommendation. So that was another saving for their water. Next, please. They were not recycling their waste. If they recycle the cardboard bags, papers, and aluminum, they could reduce their impact on the environment. Instead of landfilling, they could recycle it and they can reduce their impact by reduction of the emission by 1,200 metric tons. Next. So we are working with TMAC at UTEP and we are working with CURT. So they had a good potential for saving if they do process improvement in their transport, in defects, in motion, and they could save about close to $1,300,000 for their total cost saving. Next. So this is the final slide that shows that how much they can save and if they implemented all the recommendation. Some of them are easy and we will do the follow-up to see how much of those recommendations they have implemented. Next, I think that's the last slide and I'll be happy to answer any question you might have.
So at this time, if anyone has any questions, you may enter it in the chat. If not, we will continue on with the presentations. So our next speaker will be Kurt Middlecoop from UTA. He's spent the past 34 years as an industrial engineer working with organizations to create economically sound processes that minimize negative environmental impacts while conserving energy and natural resources. He has 17 years of training and on-site delivery of assessments promoting best practices from the EPA, DOE, and the U.S. Green Building Council. Please welcome Kurt.
Hi, this is Kurt. Just wanted to check, can you see my slides okay?
Yes, we can.
Very good. So I'm going to talk today about a company that we just helped about 3 months ago. It's a small metal finisher in Garland, Texas called Nortex. So TMAC is part of a national network. If you're not familiar with the NEP network, TMAC is the affiliate for the state of Texas. In addition to working for TMAC, the University of Texas at Arlington has I think it's now over 20-year history of applying for P2 grants. So TMAC works very closely with EPA's Region 6 to deliver our P2 grants. And part of that delivery was doing the E3, which is the economy, energy, and environmental assessments. So here's kind of just a quick picture. Nortex is a very small company, owner operated. The gentleman that purchased it back in 2018 had limited experience in operating a metal finishing facility. and he has about 7 employees. So it's a very small facility. So the first thing we did with Shelby at North Tex is we knew that we needed to get his attention somehow. So part of the assessment included, in addition to doing a lean overview, we also were looking at energy opportunities. And in reviewing his energy opportunities, one of the things that I know that Jalal does and that we do is we take a look at their utility bills. And when we looked at their utility bills, we saw the line that said state sales tax, and it had a number on it, like, oh, why are you paying state sales tax? So they were unaware of the ability to get an exemption if they use more than 50% of their electricity for the purpose of manufacturing. So what we decided to do was let's fill out the forms to get that refund back for them. And so we did that. We conducted a predominant utility usage study, and his refund was $31.50. And I think at that point, then we discussed the idea of, well, now that you've got $3,000 more in your pocket, how can you leverage that to find more money? And he was very interested. So we got his attention with the cash. And then from there, we moved on to the next phase. So one of the major things that just stood out in front of us was as you can see, he's got these very old etch tanks in his facility. In fact, this is a photo of one area. There were 11 total tanks in his out on his factory floor. And as we asked questions about how he was turning them on and off and how he was controlling them, we were very surprised to find out that none of them had any type of thermostat settings on them. He would simply come in the morning at 6:30, walk over to the breaker box, power up the breakers, and just hope and wait until the temperatures reached the appropriate temperatures that he needed in order to begin dipping. So when we looked at the etch tanks, clearly we saw uninsulated tanks. We saw waste of energy. With that heated fluids, we knew they were evaporating into the air, and we could look up on the ceilings and see the walls were corroded, all the piping was corroded, the fumes in the building were pretty bad. So we thought, hey, this is the place to go. If we can show him how this one etch tank has a lot of opportunities, he may take action on all of them. So part of that was identifying many years ago, I think working with the TCEQ, I had heard about these floating balls that you can put on an etch tank to reduce the evaporation. So we just randomly said, hey, why don't you put insulation on your etch tank to reduce the evaporation? He was totally unaware of that. And at that point, he agreed to take some of that $3,000. He spent $220 to buy some insulation balls for the tank. The other thing the E3 that was doing differently this year from past years, like Joel had mentioned, we have always been able to go in and identify savings opportunities and do some like engineering best estimates and sometimes collecting the data. But we're sensing and have really seen the push from the EPA to get, when we can, get the real data. Is there any way you can get real hardcore data? So that was our goal here, is we wanted to quantify what was going on with the tank before these UFO insulation balls were placed on it and after. So that was the challenge. And so what we ended up doing is within TMAC, we had 2 engineers who strictly work on putting monitoring equipment in facilities as part of their automation. So no, though I'm not the automation guy, the system contained a variety of software and actual sensors that were placed on the equipment. And I'll show you some photos here. So if you look at the far, I guess the box along the wall with the green light, this was actually the box that contained all of the wireless network that would actually send the signal, not through their internet, because we knew that sometimes companies don't like you messing with or logging onto their Wi-Fi in order to gain access. So this little standalone box sent the signal directly to a satellite, and then directly from the satellite directly to UTA, where these engineers were able to bring up the data. So we had the monitoring controls, and I'll talk about the light here in a minute. And then on the far right, you can kind of see open up the panel, there's lots of wires and stuff, but basically we put in sensors that were monitoring the actual heaters in the tank, and then also looking at the electricity usage and also the actual temperatures of the tanks. Here's another photo, kind of the complexity of the wiring. The wiring of the system took our staff, there are two gentlemen that went in, and it took them about 45 minutes just to walk in. They shut the power off, they put the sensors on, and then they were up and running. So it wasn't though it looks super complicated, 90% of these wires were already hanging out there. We only had to connect into a small area. So here on the left, you kind of see we added a thermocoupler because they were not measuring the temperature, electronically anywhere. They had thermometers, they were checking the temperature. So the thermocoupler was placed on the etch tank, and then you can see on the right there where the light is. We gave him this box, and the box had a light. It's called an andon light that told him if it was red, the temperature was higher than what he wanted. So he gave us the range, the ideal range for this metal etching, which was somewhere between 110 and 140 degrees. So when that temperature was there, he knew he could use these tanks for the purpose of metal plating. And that's how he makes money, is he's got to get the parts in the tank and to plate them and then continue the process. So he was now able to look over and just see, oh, the temperature's good. We can adjust the power as needed. And here's a photo of the flyer from the floating, we call them UFOs. And a first thing to notice about them, over, I guess in the 80s, when I had seen these insulating balls, they were round. And you can see the photo there, a round ball covers a certain diameter across, but this company has created a UFO shape. So it's oblong, creating a wider surface. And also these things are more stable. They tend not to flip. In fact, if you look at the photo, you kind of see how they kind of line up nicely versus just bunching. So the UFOs were basically dumped into this tank. And this, again, this is about $220 of UFOs dumped into his etch tank. So we did that. And the other thing we're trying to do is validate what the manufacturer was saying about these insulation. And certainly they knew that it could reduce evaporation. They knew it could save energy. And they knew that it could also just improve the ability to maintain temperatures throughout the metal plating operation. So if you like graphs, this graph is actually from the data that was collected. The blue is actually the actual temperature that was going on. And then the gold area is actually the heater, the extra temperature. So you can kind of see the tank is heated up, it reaches temperature throughout the day. And they were able to see very closely how, obviously, when you add electricity to the tank, the temperature increases. So this is the final slide that we gave to them. And I think it really speaks a lot about what we were trying to do. The top section of the graph is the before, and then the bottom is the after. And a couple of things that just really stand out. First of all, for him as an owner, he's trying to plate material all day long. So he was having to wait. At the top, you can see in the top right, about 5.5 hours before this tank reached the actual temperature that was needed. So if he came in at 6:30 in the morning, it was lunch before he could begin dipping parts in the tank. And with the insulation balls on there, the time to reach it was only 3.5 hours. So what immediately he got out of this was an increased efficiency where the tanks were available. Previously, he could only use the tanks about 24%, 24.5% of the day. And with just $200 of these floating balls, he now could use the tank 55% of the day because the tank had reached its actual temperature. And here's kind of a summary. So we took the temperature and also the availability, and we calculated the cost. So he gave us his information for actual kilowatt hours of electricity. We had the actual consumption of the kilowatts that were used, and the before case for the 6-day sampling. And the other comment is that the 2 sampling periods, we made sure that the outside air temperatures were pretty close. We had we actually had the data collected for 3 weeks, and then we put the spheres in and we had 3 weeks more of data. So what we did is we took days that were comparable ambient air, so the outside temperature of typical days before and after. So we knew that the savings were coming from the insulation, not just because the day was hotter or cooler. So the tank cost per day before putting these spheres on was about $13 a day. And then afterwards was about $8.50. So, when you spread it out over a year, you're looking at basically a little over $1,000 for this one tank just in the heating cost. And then the big piece that was what he was super excited about was the tanks were now increased by 30%. So he could actually make money on all this equipment 30% more time during the day. And then the next activity that we kind of asked him about was, we did this on one, and we said, well, how many more of your tanks would this apply to? And he said, we have 6 tanks I'm going to do this to. So these savings for this one project will be multiplied by 6, and hopefully getting him, over in cost savings 6,000. But then what we're going to be also getting more information about his chemical use should be going down. His maintenance cost for all the electronics should be going down. The employees that are in that area hopefully will notice less, airborne smells in the area. So he was very excited about this. And in fact, what he's agreed to do is this whole study, he has offered to share his story with the EPA, which he's not here personally today, but he's ready at any time to speak on behalf of this project and speak at any conference, any trade show, anything that is needed, because he was very, I guess the P2 world has now gained his ear, and he's very interested in learning more. And here's his quote, because part of what we do is we always want to try to capture an actual quote from a customer, and you can read it. Basically, he really liked the idea of collecting real data. It wasn't my opinion or the DOE's opinion or EPA's opinion. It was actual real measured data that he could then, as an owner, look at it and say, the data says, yes, I'm going to do this. And I think that's really kind of what I'm hearing more. And I agree totally with it. Data, real data is the way to make decisions, not on a feeling or an assumption, but having the collected data. So we're excited to have a great example of this idea. And I think moving forward with technology, the idea, kind of our envision is for TMAC and UTA and in our P2 work is, it would be really nice if in 10 years from now, we had 30 facilities who had monitoring equipment that they were using to collect data that they would continue to share back to our network that we then could share to the P2 network. So I think data collection is certainly here. It's affordable, and this story is a great place to get started. But thanks again to the EPA Region 6 for the opportunity to continue to be able to try new things like this. We appreciate the partnership and the long 20 years plus of having the ability to deliver the message of P2 and environmental protection to all of our manufacturers across the state of Texas and the Region 6 EPA area. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
If any questions are needed to be answered, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll give it about a minute and see if there's any things that we need to answer. All right, we'll go ahead and continue on with Live City and Andres Peña. He is responsible for the organization's impact measurement system for the tracking of your city's collective impact. With the MBA, the Universidad de los Andrés occurred over 10 years of experience managing projects and assisting young companies into operational and financial sustainability before deciding to focus on developmental initiatives throughout his native Colombia. Driven by developing equitable and sustainable communities worldwide, Andrés completed an MC in developmental economics and in international development from Tulane University. Today, with a career built around the idea of doing business for good, Andrés is a passionate believer of merging the demands of a business world with the needs of their communities, and is in New Orleans' potential to become a hub for developmental initiatives at the global scale. Please welcome Andrés.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Can you see my screen all right? My presentation slide?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Just checking. So yes, my bio speaks wonders of me. I hope to live up to those standards. And yes, thank you for taking the time to join us. And thank you very much for all other presenters for just, you know, a wonderful overview of the work so far, and just such great ideas. So yes, I'm going to be speaking on behalf of a fantastic partnership that we have created with LSU and with EdTech. I work as an impact consultant for Live City, and during the last couple of months, we have been able to join forces, leverage each other's expertise, and of course, stand on the shoulders of the EPA to carry out this fantastic P2 work. Yes, let me get started. Similar to your assessment, Patricia, we also are finding a reinvigorated passion or an awakening towards our outreach efforts. During the first couple of months before, you know, widespread vaccination and kind of local officials just stopping the lockdown measures and whatnot. Getting assessments was not very easy. There was it was very time consuming and it was a lot of hard work. I remember clearly the fantastic P2 meeting about marketing initiatives that we had the chance to attend a couple of weeks ago, discussing this with other participants, other organizations. Just, you know, the different strategies that had to be combined in order to get the attention of organizations and to get them on board. Now, during the last couple of weeks, we have faced a lot of demand for new assessments. Many of these assessments are still being produced, right? Even today, part of the team is on site carrying out another assessment. But it is refreshing to see this new perspective that has grown within the state of Louisiana. And you know, we have been very persistent in trying to present the P2 program as an alternative, not only for, of course, you know, pollution prevention and whatnot, but also the need to connect with new market demands. So I think that maybe to your point, Patricia, there is an awakening to not only get these environmental savings, these financial savings, but also start meeting the market where they want to be met, right? And the pandemic just helped, you know, this awakening. Needless to say, as we have moved forward, right, we have been able to leverage the location of all of our members, right? With Live City, LSU, and EdTech. Located at different parts of the state, we have a pretty fantastic way of covering the different opportunities that have been arising, right? Needless to say, there's been a lot of driving around in the last couple of days, last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of movement and a lot of figuring out, you know, previously COVID restrictions, and just right now how to, schedule all of these new assessments. But it is a fantastic effort, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the highlights for us during the last couple of months. Right. So regarding NEA number 1, food and beverage. Right. We had the opportunity of visiting a fantastic catfish fillet facility. This is Guidry's Catfish. It was established in 1976, and the scale of it is just it's breathtaking. They produce 500,000 pounds of fillets per year, and it is just ongoing and a permanent example of very well thought and very well implemented pollution prevention measures. They have very little waste. They generate very little waste, and they most of their product, the one that the part of their product that doesn't go to their fillets is sold and used for a ton of other byproducts, making them a fantastic operation in terms of resource management, right? Amongst them, the opportunities that we found during this visit was mostly energy efficiency through lighting and their cooling systems, and some attention to their wastewater, right? Both have a significant opportunity of being addressed. Right, the final numbers for these potential opportunities are still under evaluation, we're still calculating them and receiving information to be able to establish those. But it just caught our attention because of the sheer size of their production, right? Then, in a similar way, we had the chance of visiting a fantastic shrimp processing plant, which it was established in 1995. Now, something fantastic about bioshrimp processors is that their average tenure amongst their employees is 20 years. So it is a group of fantastic professionals of the shrimp industry that are just extremely passionate about the quality of their product. So when we visited them, we noticed that part of their product after peeled was just being directed to the landfill. That is 18,000 cubic feet of waste from the shrimp, right? The heads and the shells, at a rate of $90 per pound to the landfill, which includes transportation. So based on our discussions and on LA Tech's researching expertise, we have considered that hydrothermal carbonization, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and basically turning this waste into a fuel resource would, at the end of the day, save the company $1.6 million, and of course allow the organization to divert that previously considered waste from the landfill. Again, the scale of it, and of course, being in Louisiana and being able to address these opportunities within the food industry is just spectacular. And again, the reinvigorated and the newly discovered interest from the organizations to let us accompany them in discovering these opportunities it has been phenomenal. And then, just to stay within the food sector, another fantastic opportunity that we found with an organization that is just barely after its first year of operation, which is Happy Raptor Distilling, was to turn their hibiscus waste from their rum production in New Orleans into either an energy resource, again through hydrothermal carbonization, or even tea. So within our research and leveraging LA Tech's biomass lab, we have been able to even to start addressing those very big opportunities, very large scale opportunities within the food sector, within the food industry in the state of Louisiana, to smaller operations, but just part of this, growing interest of just being part of the movement, of being part of the discussion of how to improve operations. And you could slice it many ways, but at the end of the day, I think LSU's efforts, our LA Tech's efforts, and our efforts combined and leveraging each other expertise is just giving us a broader channel, a broader network where to market these opportunities through, right? Okay, so let's continue. I wanted to present a small case regarding chemical manufacturing, our second NEA. And this has to do with Ragan and Macy, established in 1991. Again, a very big operation. They have presence in over 3,500 stores. And right now, their biggest opportunities from where that we have identified so far are through efficiency practices in their packaging, and by addressing air compressor and PSI opportunities, as well as retrofitting older lighting fixtures. The sheer size of it, of course, makes it very attractive. And for us as a network, what we have really valued is kind of the opportunity to start increasing our footprint within the chemical industry in Louisiana. Of course, a very big one, a very reluctant industry at times, depending on the actors. But again, a fresh interest in these initiatives, which is extremely, exciting and just rewarding after being very persistent. And I mean, that's the name of the game, just knocking on doors. And finally, regarding our metal manufacturing NEA, we visited James Machine Works, established in 1927, a fantastic organization that builds these huge tanks. They're called the ASME vessels and the API tanks. In total, they produce over 100,000 pounds of metal products per year. And again, it's within, because of their size, the opportunities that just came to mind after the first visit, because this was recently, not so long ago, were lighting retrofitting and again their cooling systems. So it is, connecting to what again Patricia was saying, just testament, I think, not only the number of assessments that we're carrying out today, testament to how well our partnership has been working, and the very, very hard work that we've put into outreach efforts, but also a new approach that people are coming out of from the pandemic and lockdown, and kind of maybe realizing the need to discover these efficiencies for their operations, but also connect to what the markets are demanding now, right? And in such a way, and maybe tag to what Jalal was sharing with us about the importance of their competition, and how a friendly competition sparks ideas and generates interactions and brings this social component that is very important for us in Louisiana, and particularly around these efforts. I wanted to talk to you a little about our awards process, our certification process for this year, which we celebrated in January 28th. This year, the event was virtual. We had over, let me go to this slide. We had over 130 organizations registered, I believe. And this year we had a record attendance of 397 individuals. Now, previously, during the years before, with in-person events, our attendance had oscillated 300, 400 people, depending on the venue. What made this particular event special is that these were 397 individuals purchasing tickets. Now, to sell a ticket for an individual to attend an award ceremony that gravitates around social and environmental impact is very hard. Now, to sell 387 of them was fantastic, and at different price levels that addressed different impacts that we wanted to have in the community, particularly focused on the cultural industry, which was so hard hit during 2020. Regarding pollution prevention, the category winner was Glass Half Full. It is a small organization. It is a very young organization which during 2020 was able to recycle or divert 650,000 pounds of glass from New Orleans. Now, in New Orleans, that is particularly challenging because there is no city-wide glass recycling initiative. There's a lot of work that individuals and organizations have to do in order to be able to capture it and then transport it to wherever somebody can do something useful with it. Glass Half Full is focused on turning this glass into products that can help coastal restoration. But then again, it just connects with the importance of that celebration that Jalal was talking about, and that reinvigorated approach from the pandemic, of people just wanting to celebrate these accomplishments, share these accomplishments to what was Kurt's take on how difficult sometimes it is just to get the data and, of course, share it. Kind of that missing link in being able to reward organizations that take the part. In addition to this work, during the past months, we have been sharing with our network online resource guides. You can find them on mylifecity.com. The reason for to make these resource guides online was basically to offer a general overview to potential organizations that might be interested in going through an assessment in a format that could be easily editable, easy to edit and easy to share, of course, right? In years past, we had designed flyers and sort of physical, printed even pieces that were just not addressing the current market, right? This time around, we went with these online resources and shared them we share them monthly through our newsletter. We share them through our local network in New Orleans. We share them through LA Tech and LSU's partnerships through a customer relationship management system, which was one of the ideas presented during the P2 marketing meeting a couple of weeks ago. It has been fantastic. Difficult to track exactly which assessments or opportunities have funneled through these outreach efforts, but it's been rewarding in terms of being able to adjust the information and being able to complement it and update it in a very easy manner. Regarding our workshops, we held our first workshop in March of 2021 in partnership with Meeple. It was a workshop in which we wanted to leverage the restrictions and the hard times from the pandemic to highlight how important operational efficiency was, how important taking care of the environment is, how important it is to understand that all of these items are connected and you need to have a comprehensive approach to them, right? In terms of overall participation during this workshop, we didn't get the numbers we quite expected, right? We decided as a team to give it some time until we offer the next set of workshops, hoping for an in-person experience, for increased engagement and increased opportunities of building that relationship with attendants. We are scheduled right now for September to carry out 3 workshops in partnership with Entergy. Again, one for each of the NEAs that we are targeting through the grant, right? And this again just speaks about the different expertise and how within our partnership, LSU, Live City, and LA Tech, each of us takes the leading role at certain moment depending on the activity at hand, right? The ability of having this very strong assessment presence, online presence, awards presence, community presence, research. It just depends a lot on each of us taking that leadership, but very carefully just connecting to address each opportunity that surfaces, right? Okay, and to wrap up, when you consider all of these different areas, of course, there have been a lot of challenges, and we have had to pivot it during the last couple of months more than once, right? Regarding implementation, right now we are carrying out multiple assessments, right? But for those initial ones and for those carried in previous years, implementation has always been very difficult, right? What we have chosen as a team, and what the idea that was reinforced during the marketing, the EPA marketing meeting was, that relationship building, bringing these customer relationship management best practices into this realm, and by doing so, we have established that the next step after the assessment is conducted is just have those follow-up meetings, very carefully designed through those customer relationship, best practices of sharing the information, setting those new goals, setting those responsible parties within the organization, and just taking a lot of time to design that very intensive marketing effort that could lead to increased implementation, or at least that's what we're hoping for right now, right? Regarding workshop attendance, as I was telling you, due to the numbers not being as we expected, we chose to delay the rest of this year's workshops for in-person experiences, which as things are going, it seems perfectly feasible, and hopefully it'll become that lead generator that we want to be the starting point of assessment and implementations, and then sometimes and targeting what Kurt said about the real data and having that motivate organizations. Sometimes that reason to act now, that data, that opportunity for organizations to say, okay, let's do this now, it is sometimes elusive, right? There has been an awakening through the pandemic, at least from our perspective, but we keep engaging constantly our local community just to keep the discussions ongoing. And for this year, we're carrying with our Love Your City Awards, our community place-based competition that drives organizations into wanting to take action. But we're also talking with the City of New Orleans for a citywide competition, a citywide zero waste competition that would be hosted between November and December of this year. That could, be that additional punch to get increased attention. So that would be what is up ahead. We are envisioning as a November 15th to December 31st competition to be launched in sync with America Recycles Day. right? This would be open for organizations in the city. We have, addressing what Patricia also was mentioning, a software tool that we have been carefully and slowly presenting to the market, but ideally it'll be, that first step for organizations to easily find the information they need. And in this case, we're going to use it to track progress, track goals, completions, and track overall business data, amounts that have been diverted and business introductions being made, right? And we are partnering again with the City of New Orleans and with two fantastic organizations in the City of New Orleans called Second Harvest Food Bank and Schmelly's, both organizations very committed to zero waste, to pollution prevention. And moving and up ahead also, we are setting a committee, a local place-based committee, just like the one we have in New Orleans, in Baton Rouge, right? That should increase the awards footprint. And we are really eager to find a petrochemical industry that wants to be, that could help us open the door into this also very big and very exciting sector to work with in Louisiana. So, this is, of course, an opportunity to highlight the fantastic work from LSU, the fantastic work from LETech. We've been working very hard, and of course, the fantastic support from EPA throughout these last couple of months and years. And it, always a supportive hand and someone that has facilitated these discussions in the region. Extremely grateful for that and for the opportunity of participating in this roundtable. And yes, if you have any questions, please, you could send them to this email or just shoot them at me right now, and I'll do my best to answer them, to the best of my abilities.
Thank you, Andres. So we'll go ahead and give about a minute or two if anybody has some questions for him. We can go ahead and get those answered. We will also be conducting after this Q&A a quick little interactive poll and announcing a gift winner for a $10 Amazon gift card that will be sent to your email as the addresses that you used for your registration. Sorry about that.
Yes, and those success stories have been, they're very exciting, and hopefully they'll continue to grow.
About another 30 seconds before we get the poll started. All right. We want to go ahead and throw up that poll, and we'll give it about 5 or 2 minutes to about answer those. All righty. So the question was, the US citizens throw away about how many plastic bottles every hour? Oh, I think it just went back. A majority of them chose 2.5 million, and that would be the correct answer. So we're about halfway with the answers. Alrighty. Majority of everybody chose Intel, and that would be the correct answer. Alrighty, that is the end of our poll. And we would like to announce that one of our card winners is going to be Amanda Skarsgård. If that is possibly Shelby in the chat, can you send me a message if that is you? Not sure if you heard me, Shelby, but are you happen to be Amanda as well? Alrighty, well, you happen to be our first winner for one of those $10 Amazon gift cards. We are going to send you it through your email that you sent at your registration. All right. Awesome. Well, now we will continue on with our next presenter from the city of Las Cruces, Jenny Hernandez. Jenny Hernandez is a sustainability specialist for the city of Las Cruces and is a native El Pasoan. Prior to being with the city of Las Cruces, she was with the city of El Paso for 5 years working in sustainability as a climate preparedness specialist and a few years as a grant administrator overseeing federal funding. Jenny holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science from Texas State University and is currently pursuing her master's in environmental science with a focus on green roofs from the University of Texas at El Paso. Please welcome Jenny.
Hi everyone, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for the introduction. Again, I'm with the Las Cruces, and so today I'll be focusing mainly on our efforts and some of our projects that are helping to can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. And some of the projects that we're working on to address P2. So we'll do a quick introduction and then go over some of our projects that fall under our greenhouse gas emission inventory, and then our projects that fall under our urban heat island effect and green infrastructure projects. So again, we're going to focus on how the city of Las Cruces is really aiming to do pollution prevention in order to prevent, reduce our emissions, but also to ensure the quality of life for our community in terms of health when we think about climate change, and then also to think about how globally we can shift and decarbonize, and of course that also has local impacts as well. Before we get started, what is greenhouse gas reductions, right? It's the aim to basically focus on reducing our greenhouse gases that get trapped in the atmosphere because of the heat and actually cause known as greenhouse gases, right? And so they are big contributors to climate change and again have other adverse effects like human health impacts and things of that nature. And so one of the first projects that Las Cruces did is we did a greenhouse gas inventory. So basically we took a look at all of our emissions citywide, and then from that stemmed a lot of these other projects. And so if you'll notice that the biggest contributor was transportation with 53%, and then the next biggest sector was the commercial and residential buildings with 38%. And so this really spearheaded one of our other projects, which is our climate action plan for council to pass that. And it had the goal to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 19% by 2030, and then 73% by 2050. And so out of that, obviously the biggest sector was, so we decided to take the opportunity and use the city as kind of leading by example. And so one of our first goals was to convert 22% of our fleet to EVs by 2030. And so essentially that means that at least 194 EVs will be converted by 2030. And so on average, that's about, if I'm remembering correctly, on average is about 24 per year. So currently right now, what we're aiming to work on is with the police department. They have the biggest or largest number of vehicles in the city. And so we're currently working to change 8 to 10 of those. We actually have a buyer who's going to let us borrow a mock EV, a Mustang, for the police department so they can try it out and see how they like it and help with that transition to change some of those to EVs. Another project with our EVs is we are looking into an EV car share. So the state actually has a mandate that EPA has to encourage the use of EVs. And so one of the things we're looking at is to do a car share in low to moderate income areas. So we're currently looking at design frameworks and things we can mimic to implement that here in one of our new LMI developments that's happening. And you'll notice that the next biggest sector that I on the pie graph is the 38%, which is residential and commercial. And so some of our efforts for those to reduce pollution, we have done, we have a goal to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 19%. We also have another goal to have 25% of the energy be renewable energy. And so we've done a few solar projects. Currently, the city has 5 megawatts of solar. 3 of those are through a purchase power agreement, which is essentially when we get a solar company to come in and they build the infrastructure and put the solar panels in, and then we pay a fixed rate for a number of certain years. In this case, we have an agreement for 25 years that we pay a fixed rate, and that actually allowed us to meet our 25% goal to have renewable energy. And then our additional 2 megawatts of solar is actually owned by the city. And so that again helped us to reach our 25% renewable energy goal. And our other effort is to transition to net zero. And so we have a few projects coming up in new construction with the airport and East Loma to have the potential to be net zero, and so to start transitioning to that. So we're currently working on design frameworks and looking at case studies to see how we can start to transition the city to net zero. So when we talk about P2, it's one of the main priorities, or one of the things that sometimes what other people forget, right, is that obviously P2 is to reduce pollution. And so from our speakers all previously before and the great work that they're doing, if we didn't have them, a lot of that stuff is actually a catalyst to other things happening, right? So as I mentioned earlier, some of these greenhouse gases are huge contributors to climate change, which starts to have ripple effects on other things. And so one of them that most of us are experiencing right now is the extreme heat, right? And so this graph shows where we've been, where we're going, and where we are now. And so it's just a really interesting graph to look at in terms of our estimated heat wave that we're going to be experiencing. And so in 2019, we had 3 weeks of temperatures higher than 100 degrees, and we had 9 days where the temperature was higher than 105. And in 2050, it's projected that we'll have 7 weeks with temperatures higher than 100, and then 3 weeks of temperatures of 105, greater than 105. And so the one that's really interesting is at the end of the century, we're projected to have 3 months of temperatures greater than 100, and then 2 months of them being greater than 105. So we can see that the heat is just, it's going to increase, right? We're going to have it for longer periods of times, and it's going to be more extreme. And so that's very relevant to most of our climatic factors in terms of extreme weather events, right? We're experiencing not only them more often, but they're also much more severe. And so this really connects to our next two topics when we talk about urban heat island effect and green infrastructure. So urban heat island effect is essentially when the urban core is warmer than the rural areas surrounding it. Typically, it can be from 15 degrees or higher, but what happens is it's caused by impermeable dark surfaces and anthropocentric activity. And so what happens is that the sun heats up these surfaces and it absorbs that heat. And then at night, when it's ready to cool down, it releases that heat. But because of the way we've built our cities and just the infrastructure, it actually gets trapped in that urban core. And so you experience warmer temperatures. Green infrastructure is one of the mitigation techniques used for urban heat island effect. And so green infrastructure is basically when you use different permeable surfaces or different substrates such as vegetation to capture stormwater runoff. And then that stormwater runoff will get filtered through the vegetative substrates and can help filtrate the water from the pollutants of the stormwater runoff. It can also, there's also several other benefits to it. It also helps with air quality because of the vegetation. And again, reducing that heat because you're reducing the amount of impermeable surfaces that are absorbing that heat. And so specifically for Las Cruces, we wanted to get an idea of how, or the severity of our urban heat island effect, which is also known as UHI. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see a bunch of red. And so this is actually a study we did with NASA, and they took satellite data and land surface temperatures. And then so we could get an idea across the city what that looked like. And so the right hand is the red area, is impervious surfaces. And then the green spots are tree canopy. So you'll see that for tree canopy, we don't have very many, right? And this just goes to tell how much impermeable surfaces we really have in the city. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see those land surface temperatures projected on top of that layer. And so the blues are the cooler temperatures, the yellows are anywhere from 100 to 109, and the red areas are 110 to 119 degrees. So it really gives you an idea of where in the city these temperatures are the hottest, right? And so again, this was a really interesting study, but we did some other cool aspects to this project that really laid out a narrative for our urban heat island effect here in Las Cruces. And so again, on the left-hand side, you'll see the temperatures, the land surface temperatures. So this blue area is actually a park. So there's a lot of trees there. So you'll see that tree canopy actually does make the surface a lot cooler. And then here on the right-hand side in the Mesilla Valley, that's our mall, and it's all concrete and asphalt. So you just see how much hotter that is compared to the blue areas, right? And on the right-hand side, this is really interesting. So this is our golf course, this huge red area. And then here, this is another park, and it's the tree canopy, which is much cooler in temperatures, but you would think that the green green space would also be much cooler. But what we're finding is that now it depends. It's very specific to what kind of vegetative surfaces you're using, because in some instances, some of them mimic concrete or asphalt just because of the way that the soil is compacted. And so this is a perfect example. This is a green space, but because it's mostly grass, it really wasn't having that major cooling effect that tree canopy does, right? So here we're seeing that how effective tree canopy coverage can really be. And so another aspect that we did to this NASA study is we laid over socioeconomic vulnerabilities on top of the land surface area to really understand who were the people encompassing these hot spaces. And so this here is based on the census tract data. And so the yellow colorish will be the median average, and then anything below it will be orange or red. And it's 1 quartile below and 2 quartiles below. Anything above it will be 1 quartile above, and it'll be greenish blue. And so just keep this in mind for the next couple of slides that I'm going to show you from the results of this study. And so we looked at the different socioeconomic characteristics that we looked at were household composition, economic factors, housing and transportation, and health. So it was things like the age of the household composition, right? Because that makes you typically a vulnerable population depending on the age, and other factors that could possibly increase your risks for health disparities. And so on the next slide, we'll take a look and see how we layered them. And so on the left-hand side, this picture here, you'll see the physical characteristics. So this is only the land surface temperatures. So they're the same as the photos from above, from the previous slides, where it's just showing you the temperature of the land surface. And then on the right-hand side, we actually layered on top those socioeconomic vulnerabilities that I was talking about. So remember that the orange and the red sectors means that they were below the median average, either 1 quartile or 2 quartiles below the median average. So in this right photo, that's really telling, right? We're seeing that in a hot area, there's not very many blue spaces, mostly yellow, so over 100 degrees. There are a lot of people with socioeconomic vulnerabilities, even up to 2 quartiles below the median average. So this is really interesting when we start to talk about equity, right, and vulnerability. And so on the next slide, here's another example. This is the regular land surface temperature, so it's red. So we're seeing that it's up to anywhere from 110 to 119 degrees in this area. And then when we layer over the economic vulnerabilities, we see really, really red, right? So that means that they're 2 quartiles below the median average. And so again, this is really important when we talk about equity and even environmental justice, right? And it really plays in on the next one. So these are the health indicators layer and then household composition. So remember, household composition was anyone over the age of 65 or anyone below the age of 5, right? And so those are kind of the vulnerable populations. But then when we layer household, when we look at the health indicators as well, we're seeing that there's increased vulnerability, right, in these areas for both things. And so when we start to think about these factors in terms of quality of life and health, if you're having people who are, 65 or older or have pre-existing conditions and they are unable to cool their house because of their economic status, right? Obviously, this is telling us that they're 2 quartiles below the median average. We start to talk about heat disparities, right? And we'll go into this a little bit more detail in the next coming slides with another project that we did that was really interesting. But this, again, is just a narrative that is building up to some of the projects that we've done to really prove that, hey, urban heat island is it's a major factor that we're having to deal with, especially as we saw on that other map, how we're going to have it more frequently and for longer periods of times. And so the NASA project really helped us focus also in places that are the most vulnerable, right? And so from that project, we did a cool corridor project to essentially help mitigate urban heat island effect, but also address our stormwater impact issues in some of our neighborhoods. And so this is a street off Nevada. And what we did is this was the before and then the after. We basically installed 21 chicanes, which are bump outs that collect the stormwater runoff through vegetation, and some of them have trees for shading. And so we did this project, and this is an example of green infrastructure to really help with the urban heat island effect. And this is also really interesting. This is we took pictures of different places to really show the difference in temperature between surfaces, because that also matters a lot. And again, this is an example of how the temperatures vary across different land surfaces. So in this one, you'll see the tree canopy cover is way cooler than the concrete, but also way cooler than the asphalt, right? And this is a road to show you how hot that asphalt is. It's 140. And then in this one's really interesting. Underneath the car, it's 98. The pavement is 95. The trees is 84. And the grass was 78. Again, to just show you the different variability of temperatures in different surfaces, right? This is also a perfect example to show you that this is the built infrastructure that we control, right? So this means that we actually have the ability to change this and to really mitigate these factors just based on design alone. And so this, again, was part of a narrative to really help feed some of our other projects. And so what we did last year is we participated in the CAPA study, which was funded by several people. It was CP, the NHIS, NOAA, and what we did is we partnered with CAPA, and they basically do a temperature of of ambient temperature, and show you it across the span of the city. And so last year on July, I don't remember the exact date, but it was basically the hottest day last year. We had volunteers drive around and take the temperatures 3 times during the day. It was at 6 a.m., at 3 p.m., and then at 7 p.m. to capture the temperatures. And then they put it onto a map for us. And so on the right-hand side, you're seeing the results for the 6 a.m. And so kind of just keep in mind the red spots as we go through these, because it's very interesting. And so you'll see, obviously at 6 a.m., it's not too hot, right? But it's definitely starting to warm up. Again, the darker reds are the really hot areas, and then the orange yellow are still triple degrees, and then the blue are the cooler areas. So again, you can tell that it's starting to warm up. And then at 3 p.m., you have definitely much more redder spots, which makes sense because from 2 to 3 is when the sun is at its highest. So you're going to get the most absorption from that heat. But the really telling one is the 7 p.m. So you can see the really hot spots, right? But just let's take a look. There's a 7 p.m. Let's go back to the 6 a.m. one. So that means, right, this is telling a really interesting story. That means that from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., there's not really a break of or relief or a cool down of the city happening, right? And so this is really important when we start to talk about health disparities, especially in our vulnerable populations, because research is showing that people who do suffer from extreme heat, they typically don't notice the symptoms until it's nighttime. And it's because research is showing that during the day, our bodies are fine, but typically at night, it's our time for our body to reset in all ways, right? As we're getting ready for bed. And so because of this, of the prolonged heat, and we're not having a period of cool down physically and metaphorically with our bodies, right? This is when people really start to get sick. And so this is really important, because if we're seeing that there's not enough time for our city to cool down, this is going to pose even more threats for health disparities when we talk about heat, right? And again, it just goes back to equity and social justice, when we saw from our previous slides in terms of those social economic vulnerabilities compared to the places that are experiencing the highest levels of heat in our city. And so if there's any fans of National Geographic, their cover this month was actually exactly what we're talking about. It was talking about urban heat and the disparities and inequities across cities, where typically cities, neighborhoods with higher income have more tree canopy, which is causing more shading, so it's cooler, but areas of But LMI areas, low to moderate income areas, have less tree coverage. And so they're experiencing these heat disparities way more, right? And so that's why it's really important when we talk about P2 practices, because again, it's a cyclical effect, right? I think sometimes people forget to think about climate change holistically. And so when one thing goes wrong, there's ripple effects for many other things. So when we talk about not reducing our pollution, right, it's causing more gases to be emitted, which ultimately is making our cities hotter. And then with the way that our cities are designed as concrete jungles, it's absorbing it more and just exacerbating all these other things. And then now we have to think about health and things of that nature. So again, all the presenters that presented earlier are doing a wonderful job to help move the needle to reduce pollution, so that ultimately we can have less of these cyclical effects later on. And so I think this is my last slide. So if there's any questions, be more than happy to. I know I went through that fairly quickly, but also if you have any questions about our project or any of these studies, you can definitely feel free to shoot me an email. And yeah, that's it.
I'll give it 2 minutes or so to go ahead and see if anybody has any questions for her right now, and then we'll move on to our next speaker. All right, if there are no questions at this time, I'm going to go ahead and move on with our next speaker, which is Patrick Chavez, presenting on NMSU's energy usage and tracking. So Patrick Chavez is the Director of Utilities and Plant Operations for Facilities and Services at New Mexico University. He is currently an AEE certified energy manager and certified building commissioning professional. He received an Associate of Applied Science in HVAC from New Mexico State University in 1990. His facilities management career began in 1990 with the HVAC department at NMSU and became a supervisor at the department in 1997. In 2001, he left NMSU to take a position in the energy service company as a project engineer. In 2004, he took a position at White Sands Complex Satellite Tracking System or Station as a mechanical system specialist. In 2006, he returned to NMSU as an energy manager and ultimately achieved his current position as Director of Utilities and Plant Operations in 2015. Patrick is also an assistant professor at Doña Ana College, where he has been teaching HVAC trades since 1991. Please welcome Patrick. Was Patrick still here within the meeting?
Hi, Alina. He was on the meeting, but he might have gotten kicked off. I'll check on the status of Patrick. In the meantime, if you want to go ahead and announce the second winners, and then we can pull up the poll.
We'll go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and announce the winners for our second giveaway. It's going to be both Rita Ware and Norma Demund. Throughout this meeting, we'll have 5 Amazon gift card giveaways. So far we have gone through 3. So Rita Ware and Norma Demund, you will get an email with your $10 Amazon gift card.
And Norma, I think you're accidentally sharing your screen. If you wouldn't mind stopping the share, please.
We're now conducting our next polling. So if you can go ahead and take about 30 or 45 seconds to answer these questions, that'd be greatly appreciated. All right. So we went about halfway between 75 and 55% for the answers, but the correct answer would be 75%. Here's your next question. All right. 50% answered 2 million, while 40% answered 1 million. The correct answer will be 2 million. All right. That conducts our polls for this one. And as we try to get back with Patrick Chavez for that presentation, I'm going to go ahead and ask a question for Jenny Hernandez that happened to pop up in the chat. Jennifer Jennings was wanting to know, what is the city doing to promote van pooling as it contributes to lower emissions?
Yeah, so I was typing my answer in the chat, yeah, great question, Jennifer. So with most of the van pooling stuff, it's privately owned, and so it's not run by the city. So unfortunately, just because of political things, we can't favor one company. Let me put it that way. But I know that for our public transportation, they very much do try and make it accessible for everyone. So in terms of like our buses and stuff like that. And I know that they have a program that has reduced fares for people to qualify, if that's ever an issue. But yeah, specifically for van pooling, it's a little bit trickier because it's privately owned. But I don't, for public transportation, that's where most of their efforts go. And I don't think that we have an agreement with anyone for van pooling in partnership with the city. Like, for example, I know El Paso does have something similar for the county, but we don't. And so if that was the case where it was a situation like El Paso, then we could definitely push for it more. But again, it's trickier when it's privately owned and not an agreement with the city.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jenny. If there are any other questions at the moment that anybody would like to ask, I can go ahead and relay those questions. But if not, we will go ahead and move on with our next speaker, which is Melanie Lillard. Go ahead and take about a minute or so if you have any questions. Alrighty, as we continue on, Melanie Lillard will be sharing hers on the EPA Safer Choice Program. Melanie Lillard is a part of the Pollution Prevention and Sustainable Materials Management team with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region 6 Land, Chemical and Recovery Division. In addition to the EPA, Melanie worked with the National Aeronautics and the Space Administration and with the Defense Logistics Agency Defense Contract Administrative Service Management Area. She's a graduate of the University of Alabama College of Engineering and is registered professional engineer in the state of Texas. Please welcome Melanie.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to speak on EPA's Safer Choice program, which is under the P2 umbrella. Safer Choice helps consumers and businesses find products that perform and contain ingredients that are safer for human health and the environment. Hopefully I'm going to change slides. There we go. This will give you a brief overview of what my presentation is going to cover. I'll touch on the meaning and the appeal of Safer Choice, the label and the logo. I'll present an overview of the Safer Choice standard and how we review products, discuss the benefits of partnering with Safer Choice. We'll look at a couple products that are Safer Choice certified and then the process to gain certification. And then I'll also introduce the Safer Chemical Ingredients list and talk about Safer Choice Partner of the Year awards. Like the Energy Star and the WaterSense label that many of us are familiar with, the Safer Choice label is a verification by a government agency that a product contains only safer chemical ingredients, that they've met verified performance standards to ensure that they're safer not only for the environment, but for your families and your employees. In addition, our fragrance-free label is the only one on the market that a product is truly 100% fragrance-free. The Safer Choice label is a way for consumers to be able to quickly identify safer products. Here's our family of labels. There are 3 labels in the Safer Choice family. The one on the far left is our at-home use label. This is a label that you'll see in stores, and it's designed for the everyday consumer. The middle is for industrial and institutional use. Typically, this is going to be purchasers will see these when buying directly from a distributor. And then the one on the right is our fragrance-free label. And you can see that where the fragrance-free is up in the upper left-hand corner. So although we have 3 labels in the family, every product with a Safer Choice label meets the same strict standards. So what is the standard behind the label? There are requirements for performance, for packaging, and ingredient disclosure, meaning every ingredient, no matter how much or how little the product has, must meet the same strict safety criteria for human health and the environment. Partners are required to implement sustainable packaging measures to improve the packaging profile for their recognized products. All products must perform comparably to conventional products. So this gives you the confidence that you're not sacrificing any product quality for product safety. There are additional standards for pH to minimize potential skin and eye irritation, as well as restrictions on volatile organic compound content. VOCs are known to cause indoor air pollution and irritate the respiratory system. So VOC content in Safer Choice products is limited. And so that will reduce these negative side effects. Additional criteria is applied to products based on their functional class associated with the role or function of each chemical in a product. Some of those examples would be like surfactants, which aid in cleaning by reducing surface tension, or solvents, whose role is to dissolve or suspend material. The ingredients included in a functional class oftentimes share similar toxicological and environmental fate characteristics, so this helps guide with the method of review. Safer Choice focuses on key characteristics of concern for a specific functional class when reviewing these ingredients. The approach allows formulators to use these ingredients with the lowest hazard in their functional class while still formulating a high-performing product. Something to consider is when a product meets the Safer Choice requirements, it's covered under a partnership agreement for 3 years. It has annual audits assuring that the standards are maintained. At the end of the 3 years, the certification expires and the product must go through an entire process of recertification. So although this may seem laborious, green chemistry and safer chemical formulations are quickly evolving. I mean, the fields are just moving quickly. So our knowledge and as our technology grows, we want to be sure that all certified products continue to meet the safer choice requirements. The benefits of being certified safer choice. It's not just knowing that products are safer. Safer choice certified products influence the entire supply chain. With safer choice requirements, every step of the process is reviewed for human and environmental safety. Safer choice certification requires a total ingredient review. So other programs have a minimum amount of the ingredient required to be subject to review. However, safer choice review process requires every ingredient must meet the standard. Our safer chemical ingredients list is key for this step. We don't just rule out problematic chemicals. Instead, the ingredients must actually be safer. These benefits translate to the consumer in terms of ingredient disclosure on products and fragrance-free products. Our fragrance-free label is particularly unique in the world of eco-labels. Some products don't add transitional fragrances. Instead, they use chemicals that have dual functionality. The dual function ingredients serve a different purpose in the product, but they also have a scent associated with it. So this associated scent can be an irritant to those with fragrance sensitivities and can often be overlooked in other eco-labeling programs. Safer Choice is the only label that screens for the dual function ingredients to make sure that these fragrance-free products are truly fragrance-free. Unlike Energy Star or water programs you're probably more familiar with, until recently, Safer Choice has not conducted a widespread awareness campaign. And yet, in 2019 study of over 2,000 adults in the US, 37% of the consumers were familiar with Safer Choice program, and 36% had seen the Safer Choice label on their store shelf. In that same study, 79% of the consumers said that they would use the label to help them make purchasing decisions. You'll notice that the percent increases to 82% for parents and 86% for millennials. Consumers are beginning to grow more concerned with health and environmental impacts of their purchases. The Safer Choice label helps consumers make an informed decision on the products that they're bringing into their lives. What products are Safer Choice certified? We have over 2,000 certified products, and of those 2,000 products, roughly 400 have also the fragrance-free certification. The link below shows you how you can search for Safer Choice products. When you go to the Safer Choice product listing page, this is the image you'll see, and the interactive product database allows you to search for specific products using the search bar to filter either for a particular category, an outdoor use, a fragrance-free designation. You can also simply browse the entire list to find a product that would fit your needs. But once you find the product you're looking for, you can also click on the product's name and you'll be given the option to search for the product's availability in your area. So this is an easy way to find out about the product and where to purchase it. Safer Choice labeled products range in use from all-purpose cleaners to hand soaps to HVAC maintenance products. Essentially, any chemical product can apply for the label, and we're always looking to add to it. It's important to note that EPA classifies disinfectants as pesticides, so disinfectants are not covered under the Safer Choice label, but they are covered under the Design for the Environment label. So you'll look for the Design for the Environment label to designate disinfectant products that are safer for human health and the environment. It's important to make this distinction because cleaning products cannot make claims that they are antimicrobial or antiviral. Designed for the environment, certified products do follow the same strict standards set by Safer Choice program, but include requirements for active ingredients used to kill bacteria or viruses. You can also find this information on the Safer Choice webpage. It has links to Design for the Environment products. Currently, there are 34 disinfectants under the Design for Environment in 4 product categories, which include all-purpose cleaners, toilet bowl cleaners, tub and tile, wipes. The schematic shows you kind of an overview of the review process. The product manufacturer submits an application for partnership to a qualified third-party reviewer. And currently Safer Choice has 3 authorized third-party profilers: Gradient Corp, NSF International, and Tox Services LLC. The third party will review the product against Safer Choice criteria and coordinate with the applicant to make any necessary changes before actually submitting to the EPA for review. EPA then reviews the applicant, assessing each ingredient and the content function for its function class. Then they identify any areas that need improvement, opportunities to use a safer alternative, or if additional information that may be needed. EPA will talk over the findings with a third party and the applicant to either alert them to changes that will be necessary to resubmit the application or to create a partnership agreement with them. Another great part of the Safer Choice program is our Safer Chemical Ingredients list. This is a living list that has over 1,000 chemicals that have met the Safer Choice chemical criteria. And since it's a living list, chemical manufacturers are encouraged to submit safer chemicals for review to be added to this list. Chemicals may also be removed from the list or have the status changed based on new data or innovations that raises safer chemistry bar. As the list grows to include additional chemicals and functional use categories, it just becomes a greater resource for the world of green chemistry. The list can be used by companies to see if their product would be eligible for Safer Choice label and or to help manufacturers find safer chemical alternatives. The list highlights innovation in a field while meeting demand for safer chemicals. This is a great resource for anyone interested in sustainable or green chemistry, or for those looking to meet specific sustainability goals. When an ingredient is under review, a broad range of potential toxicological effects are addressed. Looking at these hazardous conditions, it really brings to light how critical green chemistry is. As I mentioned earlier, chemicals listed on the Safer Chemical Ingredient list have been evaluated and determined to be safer than traditional cleaning ingredients. They're closely evaluated for carcinogens, asthmagens, endocrine disruptors, and that's just naming a few. The process for this review includes 3 steps: a full literature review, including toxicology and chemistry studies, chemical analogs, metabolites, and potential degradation products are identified to create a holistic understanding of the chemical ingredient. And lastly, when the experimental data is not available, a chemical prediction or modeling will be used. Detailed and comprehensive review ensure that the hazard that we're looking at on the screen are as minimal as possible. What we bring into our lives matters, and including the chemicals we use to keep our homes and businesses clean and safe. Using safer chemicals with safer chemical ingredients helps protect our loved ones and the environment from unnecessary risk in both the short and long term. This is a screenshot of our Safer Chemical Ingredient list. And like the Safer Choice product listing page, the chemical ingredient list for a specific chemical, name, or functional class use. And so if you're interested in an ingredient, this is a great resource. While searching through the list, you'll notice that different indicators are used with different meanings. The safer chemical ingredient list is intended to be a resource for everyone, not just for chemists or toxicologists. So the color-coded indicators included are, if the ingredient is considered low hazard, it has a green circle next to it. A green half circle indicates that the chemical is expected to be a low hazard, but more data is still needed. And an ingredient with a yellow triangle has some hazard profile issues, however, has met safer choice criteria for its functional ingredient class. So the color-coded indicators help make the safer chemical ingredient list a more user-friendly resource for everyone. To recognize the people and organizations that help make Safer Choice programs so great, we do have Partner of the Year awards every year, and any participant in the program can apply for the award. We recognize key players in product design, manufacturing, selection, and use of products. EPA also encourages submission of applications that show how the applicant's work promotes environmental justice, mitigates climate change, results in cleaner air or water, improves drinking water. So if you have any questions or want more information on that, please reach out to me. These are just some other resources. So in addition to the Safer Choice, the Energy Star program, Energy Star program label is government backed, and it's an energy efficiency, making it easy for consumers and businesses to purchase products that save money and protect the environment. They also have great treasure maps designed to help businesses identify a variety of ways to save energy. The concept on the treasure map hunt is use a treasure map to search for energy savings. And there are several different types that you can use. There are ones for buildings, including K through 12 schools, offices, restaurants, commercial kitchens. I mean, there's a bunch. So the maps are basically a checklist that you can take as you walk around your facility, so you can find ways to save on energy in real time. We're also finding that organizing a treasure hunt is also a great way to get more engagement from your staff on your sustainability, because it affects the entire facility. Another label is the WaterSense. WaterSense is both a label for water efficient products and a resource for helping you save water. The WaterSense label makes it simple to find water efficient products and programs that meet EPA's criteria for efficiency and performance. WaterSense label products and services are certified to use at least 20% less water, save energy, and perform as well or better than regular models. And lastly, I was going to mention the WasteWise program. EPA's WasteWise program is part of EPA's sustainable materials management efforts and encourages businesses to achieve sustainability in their practices and reduce waste. I am also the region's coordinator for the WasteWise, so you can contact me for those. Also, any questions you might have.
Go ahead and give 1 to 2 minutes if anybody has any questions, and then we'll move on with our next poll and our last giveaway.
Thank you for letting me speak on this.
Thank you, Lily. And just as a reminder, there will be a 5-minute Q&A at the end of these presentations. So if you have any other questions at the end of this, please let them know. Thank you. If no questions are needed right now for Lillard, we're going to go ahead and move on with Patrick Chavez on presenting on NMSU's energy usage and tracking. Patrick Chavez is the Director of Utilities and Plant Operations for Facilities and Services at NMSU. And we kind of heard from before that he has gone through NMSU, through the HVAC departments, through all being a supervisor, teaching, and he was a mechanical systems specialist at White Sands. And then he's worked as a professor at Doña Ana Community College, where he's been teaching HVAC since 1991.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Appreciate you allowing me to skip my session. I was actually presenting almost exactly this presentation to the city of Las Cruces. They are actually very interested in some of the things I'm going to show you today. So, I mean, it's something that a lot of large organizations are having to consider. So as we go through the details of the presentations, I do encourage questions. You know, there may be some technical aspects that need some clarification, so I don't mind at all, you know, kind of catering to the response to the presentation. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. And we're really trying to showcase a little bit about what New Mexico State has done. You know, we're very proud of some of the implementations, our ability to monitor energy. I mean, it's no secret that, you know, the biggest polluter is always going to be the energy transportation sector. So we were really embracing the notion that we needed to try to maximize our utilization of existing software applications, platforms to create a more holistic implementation. So let me go ahead and get my screen going. Let's see if we can get the, can everybody see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Great. So this is going to be focused on our energy usage, and this is all forms of energy here at New Mexico State. So that'll be the natural gas, the electricity. We do actually produce in-house more than half of our own electricity. And we do it in a conventional sense where we do combust natural gas to produce that electricity. But we do have ways to recapture some of the waste heat and energy to support other utility operations. But this is really intended to showcase sort of our, like I said, holistic approach of how we integrate and implement all the various things we do here so we can make better decisions, function in a more optimized fashion. So typically when you look at organizations that have taken the big leap to figure out how to get into the digital world, you know, it's pretty common knowledge that, you know, most facilities have the ability to put sophisticated digital controls on their air conditioning system. So your heating, ventilation, air conditioning equipment, those are the air conditioners on the roof within the buildings. And then typically in large commercial buildings, we have more industrial scale systems that are large energy consumers. So any little bit of energy savings we can develop, you know, really helps out our cause. And lighting controls, you know, again, that's something that's becoming very common that can now be coordinated, you know, with occupancy schedules. So we're not just running the lights. We've all seen buildings with motion sensors, but there is a higher level of sophistication where you can get network-based, communication-based lighting and air conditioning controls. And you can actually now intermingle the operation of those two systems. But really the big leap for us was the investment in smart metering, which are really nothing more than network connected utility meters. So we can monitor real-time electrical consumption and cooling consumption. You know, how much water are we consuming? You know, that's the domestic water for the sinks and such. And the metering technology has come a long way. And I think that's really empowered us and helping us to understand how we're using our resources, where we can find efficiencies, and cause and effect. Are the things we're implementing actually making a difference and in the right direction? So this is a way to really validate you know, some of your initiatives. The solar energy is a big deal right now. You're seeing photovoltaic systems going up all over the country. That in itself is creating a little bit of a problem because everybody's kind of plugging into the system, and it's the coordination of how you're going to make all these things play nicely together is really the challenge. And so the platform we're going to see here a little bit kind of explains how you start doing those kinds of things. Here at New Mexico State, you know, we do have a few solar projects. We're putting a fairly large one on the south end of campus as a partnership project with our local utility provider. So that'll be a 3 megawatt grid with a 4 megawatt hour battery storage. So we're going to really learn about time of use of energy and try to optimize our power flows. Wind power, I mean, there's a lot of discussions here at NMSU. We do own property that is optimal for wind power. Again, it's just, you know, how do we best implement and coordinate these systems? Geothermal is another aspect of New Mexico State. We do have hot water geothermal. Many times geothermal is described as just a ground sourcing thermal source, but we actually have the traditional kind of Yellowstone Park geothermal. It is actually hot water underneath certain geothermal aquifers here at the university. So we're really looking at ways to take that to the next level. The nice thing about some of these implementations, you can start bringing the weather station data real time live into your software platform. So now you can understand, you know, whether it's solar patterns, wind patterns, and how that coordinates with your utility consumption. Performance monitoring, again, that's kind of tied to the smart metering. And really, it's just kind of expanding our notion of what these platforms should include. And, you know, historically, it's always just been the energy heavy components, but we realize there's a lot of aspects of our operation, you know, research initiatives, you know, production of potable water, you know, even our wastewater management, those all consume energy. You know, and we tend to always look at the power plants and the heating plants, but you know, we realized very quickly that it's more than just those things. And we needed to include those, like how well we're utilizing our water. And, you know, we do have industrial processes, and it does force us to have to release some of that water after it's performed its intended function. But we want to make sure we're maximizing that use of water before we actually have to replenish it. So these are just some snapshots of the system that we've developed here at New Mexico State. And again, these are just kind of standard types of technologies that are very common right now. It's just an air conditioning type system that you might see in a room, but it's just really showing you how you can monitor air quality, you know, actually the CO2 content in the space. So that way we're not moving excessive amounts of air if we don't need to, because that is energy to do that. We can limit set points. You know, most you know, large institutions will implement set point guidelines. We have done that here at New Mexico State, and we have our summer winter set points in an attempt to kind of, you know, get the behavioral change going to allow everybody to own a little bit of that responsibility. So we tend to limit our set points in summer and winter, and campus is on board with that, and that's a good thing. This is just an example of an interface to a lighting system. This is actually our basketball arena. And again, sometimes we have large events, sometimes we have smaller events, but we have installed the technologies within these types of spaces that allows us to selectively choose which lighting systems are on. So we're not just running the whole system if it's not necessary. You can tie those to schedules. You can pre-program it to the events. I know that the athletic department here at NMSU, they actually take like their volleyball schedule, and they'll actually pre-program it for the whole year. So that way it knows when the events are happening and it doesn't run, you know, too much beyond those events. And then it gives them the power to actually be proactive with some of these initiatives. And I've kind of allowed them to have the ability to do that on their own. They don't have to go through us. We actually give them an interface that allows them to connect to their own lighting systems and coordinate it with their operations. This is just an example of the monitoring of our cooling system. So here at New Mexico State, we do have a central district system, which means we provide heating and cooling at a central location, utility plant, and then we pump that heating and cooling throughout a tunnel network, and it runs up to the various buildings. About 60 buildings are tied into our district system. So they take cold water and or hot water, and they will circulate within those building interiors. And then the sophisticated digital controls can determine, you know, how much water they should take, because again, that's electrical energy to pump the water. And this is just an example where we have some smart metering that can tell us our flow rates into the building. We have the ability to run the building without our booster pumps. And we can actually free flow the building by monitoring critical pressures, and that's an energy savings there. Something unique to what we do here, we produce steam at our district plant. We run that steam to our buildings and convert that to hot water for process heating and for heating showers and swimming pools, things of that nature. But steam can become very inefficient if it does not reach its destination. And so we actually have monitors on certain lines that will tell us if the steam is actually bypassing its intended use. If it's not making it to the building, we can actually monitor and determine when we're having a malfunction of that system, just with the implementation of a few strategic sensors, because that's a huge energy loss if we're not really sure where our thermal units are going. This is an example where, even from a maintenance perspective, now this has received a lot of attention lately with the pandemic. Everybody's talking air quality, everybody's talking specialized filtration. And so part of the challenge is when you put the higher efficiency filtration to trap viruses and things of that nature, it's actually it's a more sophisticated air filter. It is more restrictive to airflow. So as you put these high efficiency filters, it is harder to move air through them. And that takes electrical energy from the blower motors, the fans, to actually draw through those types of filters. And that's a huge energy penalty. So that's the drawback to getting the air quality in check. It forces you to consume more energy in some cases. So what we've done, we've installed sensors on these filters to determine how much pressure loss or how much restriction there is within that filter. So that way we don't run them beyond their useful life. And that way we're actually using excessive fan energy to try to draw through those overly restrictive filters, and we can get maximum use out of them. So we're not replacing them routinely when they don't need to be replaced, but not running them too long where they're so plugged up that it's an energy penalty for that. So we've actually installed filter pressure drop sensors on our ventilation systems. This next picture is actually taking advantage of our smart metering on campus, where we're actually tied into our electrical meters at each building. So this is kind of like a campus building overview. And the numbers that are represented there is actually how many watts per square foot each building is consuming. And this would actually be real time. So if we were looking at the live building automation system or the energy management system, we would actually see these numbers dynamically changing, as the power flows change throughout the building, elevators turning on, miscellaneous equipment starting and stopping, printers. So all those little, slight inflections of power flow will be represented on this if we were looking at the live system. But really what we're looking for are items for, possible energy initiative, energy conservation initiatives. If we see a building that's pulling a lot more watts per square foot compared to maybe a similar type building, we need to be careful that we don't consider research buildings the same as administrative or even academic buildings, because they are very different in design, and research buildings will consume more energy because of the nature of what they do in there. So we want to make sure we're comparing buildings of similar use and type, but it will identify problems. If we see, repeated evidence of high consumption compared to a comparable building. So the information really helps us understand real-time issues if they do occur. Part of what's really helped us in developing our smart metering is, as we implement energy conservation measures on campus, and that could be either like LED lighting conversions, or if we're putting more efficient HVAC systems, the project design says, well, it should perform at this level, and therefore it should reduce this much energy and, reduce your carbon footprint and save money and so on. But if you have the inability to validate that, if you're only looking at the monthly bill and scratching your head as to why maybe it's not going down, you can't really analyze or assess, what we call measurement and verification, that what you did, is it actually performing as designed? And if it starts to deviate, it allows you to proactively, initiate some corrective action instead of having it run sort of out of sight, out of mind, sometimes for weeks or months before you realize there's a problem. So this is just an example of data that is provided from an electric meter over at our Branson Library building. We did a lighting conversion from fluorescent T12s to, they didn't quite go to LED on this project. This was done in 2014, but we did go to T5 fluorescents. But as you see the pattern of the graph here, we're running up around 440, 450 kilowatts before the project. And we can see just about midpoint of that graph where we have a substantial drop. So this proves to us that lighting conversion was a substantial drop in energy consumption. And then you can see how it continues to decline because we were able to also implement air conditioning, electronic control improvements, and just better operational strategies. But this really tells the story. So this is a snapshot in time all the way back to 2012. And we can see where we were and where we've been and where we're headed. So having these real-time dashboards is crucial to making sure that the buildings are performing as intended, especially if you're going to make a large investment in an energy conservation project. Here's an example of our boiler plant. And this is really trying to show how we've taken the steps to install what we call a conductivity sensor. And you can kind of see that. There is a representation of one of our steam boilers on the far left. There's a little green colored icon that says on. So that boiler number 4 is actually running. And as you look through those data sets, there's flow, level, pressure, and conductivity. So that conductivity reading is really important. So that tells you the hardness of the water. So we've all seen what happens when you boil water out of a pan, or if you evaporate water, you know, it leaves the hardness or the scale behind. So when we're running a steam boiler, we do have that hardness. And once it gets too mineralized, we have no choice but to remove that water from the system and run it into the drain. So that, of course, that's an undesirable loss of water. But it's just a part of an industrial process that does exist. But we want to go ahead and measure that hardness with sophisticated sensors. So that way we're not running it down the drain until we've absolutely exhausted every usable aspect of that water volume, before we choose. Instead of just, it's kind of like having a tap at the house. And if you just open the faucet and just allow it to drain uncontrolled, we want to just drain it when it's required. So we're trying to save on water. That's just doing the right thing. Water conservation initiatives. Plus, it takes energy to pump water out of the ground. We do own and operate our own water wells here on campus. And it takes a lot of energy. These wells are up to 800 feet deep, and it takes a lot of electrical energy to draw water up and to provide it to building use. So we want to make sure that we're making the best use of water to reduce our energy consumption as well, to get it out of the ground. This is just another example of some dashboards where we look at our water storage. Again, it's all tied to time of use operation. Large utility users like a university actually have different rates from a residential customer. We actually have to pay typically a time of use rate, meaning in the middle of the day, our electricity is more expensive than it is at night. Residential users don't typically see that on their electric bill, although they are paying for that. It's actually a blended rate. The utility provider kind of does some math and calculates about what it would cost to cover the day operation and the night, and they kind of give you a blended rate. Big users like us, because of the amount of energy we take, the utility providers would probably lose money if they had us on that type of rate. So they actually measure us at different times of the day. And so if there's any opportunity for me to not run things during the more expensive time of the day, then I can actually shift some of my operation. This is an example where we can take some of these high electrical energy loads like water wells and tell them to only run in the night, in the evening time. So that way we're actually getting the cheaper energy. And so again, if we're going to save money operationally, then we can use those savings to implement more energy conservation measures. So even steps like this, strategic operation windows, frees up money to deploy, and implement other energy initiatives. So, that's really in our focus when we look at these types of time of use operations. This particular dashboard is one that I created for my utility plant operators, is to really just having their kind of the thumb on the pulse of the university's power flow. This is a window of a 24-hour part of our operation where real time would be at the far end of the right end of the graph. So the red line that you see that kind of starts off midpoint left and it kind of dips down. So that red line is what we buy from our local utility provider, which is El Paso Electric. And so there's a green line that's right in the middle of that kind of just goes horizontal. That's our in-house power production where we make our own electricity. So the sum of the green line and the red line is our total power consumption here on campus, electrical. And so the idea is that my operators will monitor this instantaneous demand from El Paso Electric. And if we start getting into situations where it's not optimal, whether that's from an efficiency standpoint, a financial standpoint, it allows us flexibility to manage some of these high power consuming loads at strategic times of the day. So this is just what we call our real-time electrical demand dashboard. And this is all done through smart metering, network-based communicating meters. This is an example of how we're tied into our utility substation. So we take electricity at 25,000 volts. So this shows me all the different electrical circuit breakers that are coming in from the local utility, the amounts of power flow. It allows me to identify anomalies, undesirable energy flow in a singular view. So this is just a capture of our substation. Part of the energy expense that's very large for us here at MSU is the cooling, especially being in the desert Southwest. Our cooling bills, I mean, we're probably, when I first started building this system in 2006, our electric bill in a summer month was easily approaching $800,000, sometimes $1 million a month for the electric bill. And after we started implementing energy conservation measures, putting in smart metering, get a better understanding of our operation, we are actually down to about $300,000 to $400,000 a month in the summer. So we've cut that by more than half of what we were doing, even just 5-10 years ago. And the campus really it has grown a little bit, but we've actually been able to reduce our energy consumption. And I have another slide that'll kind of show that. But this really allows us to look at a specific piece of equipment to see how well it's utilizing electricity. If there's something that doesn't quite look right, we can pick a different machine. I would compare that to having a household where maybe you have multiple vehicles and maybe you decide you're going to take a trip to Albuquerque and you have a decision, do you want to take the vehicle that gets 35 miles to the gallon or the big truck that's getting 15 miles to the gallon? So we actually have different machines that are optimized for different aspects of our operation. So these types of dashboards are really intended to make sure that we are utilizing the best equipment choice by looking at energy flow in and utility production out. It's kind of like doing the math on your car to see how many miles per gallon you're getting. If you go to the gas pump, you put X number of gallons of gas, you compare that to your odometer, say, okay, well, I was able to travel this distance with this many gallons, then you could actually calculate your miles per gallon. And we're kind of doing that with these types of dashboards. How much we're putting into a system utility-wise, and then what we get out of it. And then it helps to identify sometimes corrective maintenance needs. If it's a machine that's needs a tune-up, so to speak, these types of graphs will help us to identify that. And this is just another example of electricity in, cooling out. So here's a nice little view that I put together for our sustainability manager quite a few years ago. But it kind of shows our energy consumption. These are megawatt hours purchased from El Paso Electric since 2008 for each month. So it kind of gives you an idea of where we used to be and the idea that we want to kind of reduce, those columns of energy as we move forward in time. And so for the most part, we've been doing very well. There are some anomalies that jump out at you. Like if you look at the month of May, there's 2018, looks like there's a big jump. So this is an example where we have to take down certain piece of equipment for either replacement or end of life. So we had to take down our in-house power production plant to replace the engine on it. It had reached its end of life. So that meant I had to buy that power that I wasn't making from the local utility. So 2018 of May does jump up because we had to actually remove our in-house generation. But once that was replaced, we were able to get back in check. But for the most part, we're very proud of the reductions we've been able to produce over time. This is just another example of another live power monitor where we're looking at the very big users, our basketball arenas, our stadium lighting, things that really take a lot of power, the water wells, the cooling systems, all in a single graphic so we can see which big players are driving our energy flow. Another example is, our platform has allowed us to integrate our emergency generators. Now, this is kind of an emissions, we're talking about pollution. So anytime you're making energy, unfortunately, if you're going to use combustion type technology, it will produce, CO2 exhaust. And so the emergency generators on campus are primarily for emergency lighting. It's just to allow people to exit the buildings to keep the critical systems up. We do not have emergency generators large enough to run the whole building system, meaning lighting, air conditioning. It really is just for egress and emergency function. But it's really important for from an EPA perspective, because as an institution that utilizes this type of equipment, we are bound by certain air permits that we have to apply for, and it allows us to operate certain equipment in a certain manner. So emergency generators are pieces of equipment that sometimes slip through the cracks that maybe building owners aren't always aware of, that they have a limitation of how many hours they can run, because they're not really considered a utility production generator, and they are typically not as efficient. They do emit more pollutants. They're just emergency systems. So if you exceed a certain number of run hours based on your permit, your annual permit, you can actually be fined for that. And so this is a way that we can be responsible and monitor how often are these things running, because they do have to exercise for life safety compliance and fire code. We have to make sure the generators will start when needed. So we have to exercise these every so often, weekly. And that's what the little graph on the right hand where it says operating hours, you can see that little stair step over time. That's a year-to-date window. That was one that I took back in 2015, actually. But it shows that the generator does exercise. But more importantly, if we look at the little dial gauges on the top row, the one on the far right that says year-to-date run hours, we cannot let that get past 500 hours, or we are in violation of our EPA air permit, and that would be bad. So this is the way we can flag that. We can send alarms via text message or email if numbers start approaching excessive hours, and that's just our way of being responsible and tying into these types of systems as well. This is a nice overview of the university's power flow. This is all the natural gas and electricity that flows into our campus, and this is actually a real-time view within our energy management system. I can see what I'm purchasing from El Paso Electric real time, and that would be the upper left. Our Tortuga substation is where we take 25,000 volts. We have a smaller substation below it, and in our photovoltaic systems, I can see the power flows from that. My natural gas to run my boiler plants and my generator for electrical production. But it really shows me where all my energy is going, to what pieces of equipment, and what is left going to the campus. It's just a nice overview of all the utility power flows. Here I've kind of taken it to a different level where I've normalized the data sets, where I've converted everything into thermal units. So you can take electrical energy and convert that into a thermal unit, and then that way you can match it up with your natural gas thermal units. Now, when you do that, you can actually calculate efficiencies of operation. So you have energy units in and versus what energy units are being produced out. Now I can tell if my machine's running, in an optimal fashion. Like in this case, I'm looking at the generator power plant, which is kind of that brown beige graphic there about center left. And there's an efficiency data set that says 69.2%. That means for every unit of energy that I'm putting into it, 69% of that's going to some desirable output, some other utility output. The rest of it is loss. It's thermal loss, stack losses, energy that we haven't been able to capture for beneficial use. So if those numbers start to go south on us, then we can very quickly start to assess or analyze, what's driving that, and before we become very inefficient and waste energy and cause more problem with pollutants and things of that nature. This is the one that kind of shows us money. I mean, at the end of the day, money allows us to do things like energy initiatives. So it's important for us that we're being as efficient as we can, because at the end of the day, that allows us to operate at lower cost. We can reinvest those dollars in energy conservation measures. We can keep tuition down. We can do other good things with that money. So, it really helps a lot of different facets of our operation. So many times when I present, and I actually just presented this right before this presentation to the city of Las Cruces, And they want to develop something similar to get a handle of all their different business operations, their admin buildings. You know, they're strewn about all over the city. So it's hard for them to visualize this, but I was trying to explain to them that, you know, the university is like a small city. Even though we're fairly dense on a centralized campus, you still have to understand that in today's technology, with all the communication-based equipment and, you know, now with capabilities of designing secure networks, that there's no reason why they couldn't tie in all their building operations, whether it's admin buildings, the water plants, the wastewater plants, you know, all the different aspects of their operation. They would actually be able to consolidate in a similar platform and really understand the impact of their operation as far as pollution, as far as energy conservation. And it just allows you to really have what you need to make better decisions. So I explained to them, you have to have the understanding and vision that if you expect this information to be available to you, you need to embrace technology and understand that there's certain things you need to do to make sure this information will flow nicely together. So a lot of our initiative was placed into putting together what we call our building automation design guideline. And it actually is a structured, detailed list of what we require if we're going to put a new building up, if we're going to put a new system, whatever that is, if we're going to put a solar panel up, that it needs to have the capability to integrate into this common platform. That way we can manage the information, we can manage the energy consumption and understand what the system's doing. So we went to the trouble to make sure we spelled out in great detail what the requirements would need to be as we add new infrastructure to our system. And so because of all this implementation here at New Mexico State, we've actually been able to partner up with our local utility provider, and they do have what's called a load management program. And so when a provider gets into a situation where they're getting to the point where they actually are almost reaching their limit of power producing capability, and depending on what part of the country you may have come from or lived in, you know, we've all heard terms like, oh, there was a brownout or a blackout or rolling blackouts, and say, well, what is that? Why are they having rolling blackouts where they have to strategically shut down different sectors of the grid to keep it online? And what that basically means is they've run out of power to deliver. They have the inability to provide that instantaneous demand to all utility users. So they have to shut one down to keep another up, and everybody kind of shares the pain, and they will take different sectors of the grid down in order to stabilize it. Otherwise the whole grid will crash. And you could have a massive, you know, like a statewide or even like a national outage. You know, these grids are interconnected in a lot of ways. And I mean, you could take down major portions of the country if things don't stay in check. So big users like us, because we do have the ability to produce in-house power, we've actually installed some nice technology that allows us to store cold water at night and build ice at night, so I can turn off my electrical equipment during the day. So we entered into this load management program that says, hey, us as a utility provider, we'd like to call on you, NMSU. If you could give us some reduction in power, we will incentivize that by giving you a dollar amount for every kilowatt you can deliver to us. So I agreed to entering into the program. It's a 5-year program. They would pay me $40 a kilowatt for every kilowatt I could give them when they are getting to a point of critical operation and they would like me to throttle back. So the way we do that, you know, we actually have the sophistication within the air conditioning controls, the lighting controls, our power plant equipment, our thermal storage sites. So fortunately, we have pieces of equipment that allow us the flexibility to throttle back our power flow. And so this is a graph that shows when I was called on, and this is typically going to happen between noon to 7 p.m. when the demand for energy is highest. And so I was able to deliver 1,500 kilowatts. They sent in a request to me. They give me a 2-hour advance notice, and we can actually drop our energy power flow. It allows them to stay up and running. And we're willing to absorb that. And we ride through that little 2-hour window. These are windows of reduction that will not exceed more than 2 hours on any given day, and no more than 10 events in a 4-month window. So it's a few requests, but it's a way to help, you know, the utilities stay online. So, you know, there's a little bit of collaboration and partnership with these types of initiatives. So because of this flexibility and sort of giving us leverage to negotiate better utility rates with utility providers, this is a graph put together by a third-party organization. The Gordian Group is actually an entity that does a lot of analytical work for higher ed. And so we are an entity that actually utilizes this firm. They will take our data, they will kind of normalize it, and they'll compare it to the regional peers. So that means like other universities like U of A, ASU, Idaho, Montana. You know, that way we're kind of in the Southwest region. So the comparison is fair, but it kind of shows you, you know, the disparity. So the dark blue line is actually NMSU's cost for natural gas on the left chart. And this is just the cost per energy unit. This is not consumption. This is just the cost for us to buy that type of utility. So we are very fortunate that our gas costs are very low compared to our composite peers, you know, where they're paying in the $6 range per million BTUs. And we're down in the $2 to $4 range. But part of that is because of our operation, because we're a good base load for them, that we do have in-house power production, and we do take natural gas at a higher pressure than most institutions, because, you know, it was strategic for us to do that we're able to purchase that gas at a cheaper cost, which allows us to pass on savings to do more energy conservation measures. What's more interesting is the graph on the right. So this is the electricity. And El Paso Electric, as far as what we had historically bought power for, is higher than our peers. You can see back to 2010, you know, we were close to what our peers were paying. But for a long time, our electricity was more expensive than our peer institutions. But something interesting happened in the 2016-2017 window. And that was actually because of our ability to do load management partnerships with the local utility provider, because of our investment and implementation of these energy monitors and tracking of usage and our ability to throttle when called upon. They incentivized more of that behavior by giving us a more attractive utility rate. So you can see in 2016, 2017, we have a substantial drop in our cost of energy. Again, that allows us to invest more in more conservation measures. So this is just kind of taking advantage of that investment we made in technology to now leverage that in negotiating better deals for us to also help turn that around into more conservation measures. So this is just my closing slide, and it just kind of shows where we were. So this is our consumption, and this would be, you know, both our natural gas and electricity per building square foot. So now this is consumption. You can see in 2010, we were actually higher than our composite peers. That means we were consuming more energy per square foot than our peer institutions. But with the implementation of the system I just showed you, with all these dashboards and all the smart metering and just understanding the data better and making better decisions, you can see very quickly that we march downhill in a fast way to the point now we're leading the composite peers in the region for total energy consumed per square foot. So this is something we're very proud of. And that was my last slide. So I welcome any questions. If there's anything specific you'd like me to expand on.
Thank you, Patrick. I believe John Mueller had a question for you. He was asking, what kind of SCADA systems do we use?
Yeah, so the abbreviation there, if everybody's looking at the chat box, so there's always going to be this reference to SCADA. And those of us in the business, and that's a term that's been around for a long time. What that actually stands for, just to make sure everybody understands what that is, that's a supervisory control and data acquisition system. That's effectively a monitoring control system. And it's what I just showed you, the ability to connect to a system, whether it's a building system, air conditioning, lighting, utility infrastructure, gather data from it, to be able to interact with it, to start, stop it, speed it up, slow it down. So it really is the interface to the building automation or control system. So that's supervisory control and data acquisition system. So he wants to know, what system are we using? So when I referenced our design guideline, you know, I had a slide there that was referencing, we invested time in developing this, and I've kind of backed up to that slide. what this was instructions on how to ensure that whatever equipment was put in place, lighting controls, photovoltaic systems, cooling systems, boilers, whatever that was, it had to connect to our SCADA system. And so like any type of system like that, it has certain communication protocols, no different than people. You know, we all can speak different languages in different parts of the world, right? French, Spanish, English, German, whatever that is. But unless you have a translator, you're not going to be able to have a conversation amongst those different diverse, you know, data sets, so to speak. So the SCADA system is really the system that has to know the language, the ability to interrogate those various systems. So the platform that we're using is actually a Tritium branded system. So it's what they refer to as the Tritium Niagara platform. Tritium is the company, Niagara is the software application. And what that is, it's really nothing more than the translator. It in itself is not the control system, which is actually running the equipment at the building level. It's important to understand that all those pictures I just showed you, that we still have these microprocessors at those individual building levels running the ventilation systems, running the power plants. So you do have these localized controls, but the SCADA system is what actually interrogates, interacts, acquires the information, and then you can create visualizations, graphics, and information flow. So ours is the Tritium Niagara platform, but understand, it's just the interrogation system. It doesn't have like the software that tells the buildings what to do, so to speak. It's just the portal into those systems that are controlling it in a common platform. And right now, we actually have about 9 pre-approved products in our building systems. Because we do have the Niagara platform, it doesn't force us to stick with brand A product that we always have to put this manufacturer or this vendor's system, which can be typical for large organizations. They go with one vendor and they just kind of stick with them because they're kind of stuck with it because they're using their application, their installation, and it tends to be proprietary. So it was important for us to develop an open protocol. The Tritium Niagara has the ability to talk to probably over 200 or 300 different protocols. So it's like the grandmaster translator that lets me talk to anything in our system.
Next question was, Norma wanted to know what kind or how we monitor our campus housing and family housing.
So from a utility perspective, we do have smart metering because the thing about housing here on campus, what a lot of people may not realize, the housing operation is not funded by the state. So when the state funds the university to run academia, they're covering the instructional and general use part of the university. That's the classroom environment. So your athletics and your housing and operations like that actually are not funded by the state. They have to operate off of the rates they charge for rooms, the cost for the food they sell, the ticket sales for the sporting events, and they have to pay the state back for that. So I have to meter those buildings. So all the electricity they take, the natural gas they take, the water, all those utilities provided to them, they actually have to reimburse the state for that. So that's why it's an important question for the housing operation, because they do have to pay that back. So we do have metering on the critical utilities, you know, the electrical, the water, and the steam and the chill water. So when they get their bill, it's actually a function of what they're consuming. So anything that those types of operations can save. So let's say housing decides they want to have a student initiative to, hey, let's have an energy competition within the dormitories or the housing sector. All those savings, because they are reimbursing the state for that. So any reductions that they develop with their internal programs is a direct saving to their business operation. We don't get that money. We just bill them less. So it's a direct benefit to them to implement energy conservation measures specific to their operation. But we do meter them, and they are tied to the Niagara platform that I just showed you.
Thank you. Thank you for answering those. So we'll go ahead and continue with our last poll of the meeting, and then I will announce our last 2 winners. Go ahead and take about 30 to 45 seconds to just answer this one last question. All right. About 60% answered 10%, but the correct answer is going to be 30. And our last winners of the day are going to be John Mueller and Mark Beblu, I believe is how you say his name. I will go ahead and read off our entire winners for the day. It was Norma Diman, Rita Ware, John Mueller, Mark Beblu, and Amanda Skarsgård. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for speaking today, and it was very interesting to see what everybody had to say. And is there any other questions for anybody while we have our last 4 minutes, 5 minutes of the meeting? I know there is one for Kurt from Chris Campbell. He wanted to know if you've had any experience recently in doing any type of virtual assessments with Jalal and NMSU.
I think the answer is we are working on our technology, and I think Chris and Jalal and I did look at one manufacturer's processes, but not a complete assessment, not completely. We did a section of one.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Got about 3 more minutes if anybody else has any other questions for our speakers.
So I just want to thank everybody that attended this meeting, and also thank all the presenters. This was a great meeting. We learned a lot. Usually we have this kind of roundtable, in person. Last time was in Louisiana, and hopefully we will gather soon and we can meet in person. Thank you all for attending, and see you soon.
Thank you all. Hope everybody has a great day.
Okay, thank you, Jalal.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Jalal.